Hello and welcome to a special bonus episode of Talking Law, brought to you by latitudelaw.com. I am Sally Penny, a barrister at Kenworthy's Chambers in Manchester. I am the founder of Women in the Law UK, an organisation which is passionate about supporting the next leaders in law. For this special episode of Talking Law, you'll hear from Gary McIndoe, an immigration solicitor and founder of Latitude Law, a firm which specialises in business immigration, refugee and human rights. Gary is also chair of the Electronic Immigration Network and also a trustee of human rights charity RAPAR. I asked Gary what specifically attracted him to this area of the law.
So I got really rubbish A-levels and I started a degree in linguistics that eventually I didn't realise I didn't want to do. So I dropped out and I got a job, and I moved away from Manchester down to Croydon to work for the Home Office, in fact.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And that is how it started, really. So I worked there for 3 years, did a bit of travelling after that, and then went back to study law. I graduated and I looked to immigration law because it's kind of what I'd been working in, and I had some experience, so I was more likely to get a job in that area. And to be honest, it's not been a bad area to specialise in. It's interesting, you know, to do stuff like judicial review. I think a lot of lawyers don't get the opportunity to do that kind of litigation, and obviously there's a big human rights element. So I was kind of lucky, really.
Yeah. Now, you came back to the north then after London. Were you ever worried that your career might not flourish in the north?
I didn't really think about it, to be honest. I was in the same situation that a lot of law students are in. I didn't have contacts, you didn't know lawyers, and I had to really work hard to get a training contract. I ended up getting one in Newcastle upon Tyne.
Oh, did you?
Was up there for a while.
I was going to say, how was that?
It was pretty cold, but it was a really good training. I worked at David Gray & Co, which is a good multidiscipline practice. Again, a good kind of human rights background, and I sort of qualified back in Manchester then, and it didn't really occur to me to go back to London, even though I'd kind of lived and studied there for about 8 years.
Wow. And can I ask you about this north-south divide in law when it comes to career opportunities and financial success? Do you think there is one? I
mean, I'm sure there is in terms of financial rewards, but I don't see that, there's a big difference in the substance of the work we do. I suppose I notice it when we're instructing counsel, because we work in quite a specialist area, it can be a bit tricky, to get people locally. There are chambers that do, including yours, Sally, do immigration work, but you want some at short notice. You've got the big sets like Garden Court in London who, they've got a good range. So we do tend to instruct out down there quite a bit, but I think Manchester's a great city to practice in.
Absolutely. And interestingly, you mentioned travelling before, and you've been, all over the world: Brazil, New Zealand, Indonesia, Israel, Burma, India. Do you think that has actually impacted your view on immigration law here in the UK and your interest in human rights?
I think so. I think what it's going to help me with primarily is kind of improving my geography. I think what it also teaches you is to be a bit more kind of resilient or self-sufficient.
Yes.
So definitely helpful from that point of view. I would definitely encourage, well, not just prospective lawyers, I would encourage anybody to do it, really. And I think it kind of helped me to get into a job, because I did that before I got my training contract. And
yes.
Yeah, it kind of gives you something to talk about, and some, rather than just going straight from university, law school, straight into a training contract.
Absolutely. Now, so talking about the job, can you remember a case that's changed your career?
I was thinking about this. I would probably pick a case that I've been involved in on and off for probably about 12 years now on behalf of various family members. The case involves a Rwandan family, and the mum and dad, they're accused of involvement in the genocide in the 1990s. And it's been a mixture of asylum and extradition. I mean, I'm not an extradition specialist, but my previous firm, we worked closely with the criminal team there who were handling the extradition matter. And I think what it really taught me was the value of solid research and case preparation. I think, we put a hell of a lot of resource into that case and ended up with a good result. It didn't stop the Rwandan government coming back and having another go at extradition, but again, that was successfully challenged. It reached the point now where I'm acting for the children. There are some children who are now adults, and they require separate representation. So it's kind of the case that keeps on giving, really.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and actually impacting people's lives in a positive way.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to ask you about whether you think the legal sector has an issue with diversity, and if there are any specific areas worse than others, if you like. We're I suppose our concern is gender, because we're called women in the law. But actually, we have lots of male members and male champions. But do you think there are other areas? There are very few BAME practitioners. There are still social mobility is still an issue. How can we rectify some of these?
Yeah, I think that what you've got is quite a significant divide in the legal profession between those with contacts, and as I said earlier, I wasn't one of those people, from a white, relatively working class background, and I didn't have any kind of the leg ups available to to certain people who might then end up in larger firms. And I think how it impacts, or how I see it impacting on black and minority ethnic practitioners or potential practitioners, is they're often kind of pushed towards working for smaller firms, and I think they're pushed towards starting on their own earlier, because they're being denied kind of career opportunities. And I think that kind of stores up problems for some people. And I think those smaller practices, they suffer from lack of supervision, lack of systems, perhaps lack of resource. They're far more likely to get in bother with the regulators than larger businesses. And I think that comes back to that kind of denial of opportunities early on in people's careers, really. Yeah,
in the same way as women who have suffered some form of discrimination on grounds of pregnancy or so on, then set up on their own, and then trying to build, rather than the larger organisation supporting and nurturing those talents.
And it's hard. I think I set up my own practice 11 years ago. Along with the rest of the immigration department at Robert Lazar's in Manchester, we were made redundant, basically. The firm decided it didn't want to be involved in immigration work anymore, and I had a big decision to make then. I could have applied around, looked at working for another firm, but we decided as a group, so as me, one other solicitor, and a couple of admin people, we decided to kind of go it on our own, and that was a daunting time for me, because I'd kind of borrowed the money to start things off, to rent an office and buy a computer and stuff like that. But I'm really glad I did it, but I see the pitfalls, I can see the dangers. We had I was probably lucky, really. We had an SRA inspection within probably 18 months of setting up.
Wow.
And I think it was...
I'm not sure if that's why in a positive way.
It was quite helpful.
Yes, now you reflect on it.
Yeah, reflecting on it. Exactly right. Yeah.
So I suppose that probably set the grounds as to how you wanted your workplace to be, really, because I know you're very keen on well-being, which is something I'm going to ask you about, what you do for well-being and how you are trying to monitor the well-being of the staff, the solicitors, and in your firm, because you have yoga and stuff like that. What do you do for your well-being, and what do you do for theirs, really? Yeah,
we do try to create a good office environment. We've just moved to St James's on Oxford Street in Manchester. It's a much larger. We've basically tripled our floor space.
Wow.
We've got everybody on the same floor, which is a really positive move. We've got much better meeting space. And what we've done over the years as well is kind of promote a collegiate atmosphere in the firm, really. We have we have a staff conference every year. And the last few years, we've been lucky enough to be able to take everyone abroad. So we've been to Spain a couple of times. We were in Morocco a few weeks ago, and we take everybody. We take from the senior solicitors down to the admin team and the reception team. Everybody comes with us, and I think it's really
brilliant.
It's really helpful. And we also we have a former employee who decided she doesn't want to be a lawyer, and she's now a mindfulness practitioner, and we took her along as well, and she did sessions with us by the pool in Marrakesh. And I think, it's a relatively small thing. It's for a few days in a year, isn't it? But it's kind of a nice focus for the practice, and it kind of informs how we run the place, for the rest of the year.
Yes, and building the team. Yeah, interesting. So, what do you think was one of the biggest misconceptions that the public has about lawyers?
One of the biggest misconceptions, I think, would be that the legal profession is a homogenous bunch of people. The differences are not between barristers and solicitors. They're between the corporate world and the kind of personal, private client, legal aid aspects of, law, working in a law centre. You've got such a gulf between people who work in those two, very, very different sectors. And I think, the whole idea that lawyers make a load of money is it still exists in the public eye, I think, and clearly it's completely wrong. When council's doing work on, for fixed or graduated fees on, kind of hearings, it's worse than driving a taxi, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And so, what piece of advice would you give a young lawyer today?
I think the advice I give would be, as well as being a lawyer, you need to be a business person as well. You need a commercial mind, and that applies, I think, even if you're starting out in a law centre. That law centre still has to survive economically. It has to think about fundraising, and it has to be viable.
Yes.
Because you don't get the same kind of local authority grants that I had when I was running a law centre in North Manchester.
Absolutely. And that's very good advice, actually, whether for solicitors or barristers, to have a commercial view. So what's your concern? What's your biggest concern about the future of your specific area of the law?
I think that the challenges that are presented by the UK leaving the EU, or potentially doing so, are a big issue for us.
So Brexit.
I mean, lots of people who say, "Oh, this is going to be great for you, isn't it?" And I say, "Well, you might think that, but what we've noticed over the last couple of years is that the flow of people, moving into the UK has gone down. There are not so many people interested in coming to live and work here, whether they're from the EU or from elsewhere, to be honest. There's been no evidence that the government's going to make life easier for non-EU migrants as well. I think that was probably a bit of a misconception at the beginning. A lot of people who were pro-Brexit were talking about it creating a more benign environment for, Indian subcontinent or African visa applicants. But I really don't see that's going to happen. And I think, for the corporate clients we represent, while the challenges are there, and that you might think that would increase the amount of work we get from them, what's actually happening is, especially with Brexit uncertainty, is people just aren't making decisions. People are just putting things on hold. And we've definitely seen a slowdown in the last, I suppose in the last quarter of last year, first quarter of 2019.
Interesting, because the Bank of England says the same thing about economic growth. So it is all linked. Now, Gary, you're dealing with some of the most vulnerable people in society, and sometimes going through very difficult times. How do you ensure your well-being?
Cycling's a big thing for me. I was in Wales a couple of weeks ago, and I got out early in the morning. I did 70 kilometres around around a reservoir and up some hills and down some hills, and it's just amazing. You can just lose yourself. You're struggling up inclines, and there's no room in your head for anything else, really. It's a good way to get away. I run a bit, and I have to parent teenage kids. That takes your mind off things. It's not exactly a stress buster, but it kind of puts work stresses into perspective.
Yes, absolutely. Now, one of your roles is that you're a trustee of the human rights charity RAPAR, which is RAPAR. Why is that role important to you?
I came across RAPAR through Dr. Retta Moran, who was an academic. She was working at Salford University at the time. This was quite a few years ago. RAPAR is about what the academics called action research. So it's about involving the individuals in active work on their own behalf. So you're not just treating them as subjects. The academics are not just treating them as subjects. They are assisting them and empowering them to do work on their own cases and to think about the contacts they have, and to use those contacts rather than just be the subject like a lab rat or something.
Yes, quite.
And it's kind of an interesting approach because, especially with cuts to legal aid, and I actually was at the Emmanuel Church in Didsbury yesterday. I was doing a talk they've got quite a large Iranian congregation, and I did a talk after Sunday service, and we were talking there about the need to do work on your own behalf and to think about what corroborative evidence you might get, to support your asylum claim, because your lawyer working on a fixed fee or a graduated fee really doesn't have the resource. It's not that lawyer's a bad lawyer.
Yes.
It's that they've got a lot of cases and they've got a couple of £100 per case that the legal aid agency allows. And it's extremely difficult to do everything that needs to be done in an ideal world. Yes.
So how does that, affect your day job, if you like, the RAPAR work?
I suppose it kind of keeps me in touch with that field of work. The asylum work's something that we still do at Latitude, but it's less of an emphasis now. We're much more kind of commercial, immigration oriented. So it's good to maintain those links. RAPAR's a good grassroots community organisation. Yeah. It's very good at getting volunteers in. We've had crossover between RAPAR and Latitude. People who've shown themselves to have promise within RAPAR, and they're quite often from refugee or immigrant backgrounds themselves, and it is really nice to see people kind of make that transition, and once they've got their status, to kind of transfer into the work and perhaps gain some work experience with us.
Yes, and sort of be paying back.
Yeah.
Interesting. Gary, just finally, you've got quite a lot of women who work for you, and specifically one of your staff who started really, is it Gemma, or have I got this
Gemma,
wrong? Yeah. I just wondered if you could share really her journey.
So I worked with Gemma when I was at Robert Lazar Solicitors in South Manchester, and Gemma had joined from school. She was 16 or possibly 17, and she worked on reception. And when the firm closed the immigration team, Gemma was one of the 4 people, including me, that came to Latitude. And she's a real kind of paradigm of how, or a really great example of how you can do things a different way. She didn't do A-level, she never went to university, but she's through a lot of hard work. She's put herself through the ILEX process.
Absolutely.
So she's done exams and she's qualified. She's become FILEX, and then she's cross-qualified as a solicitor.
Amazing.
In the last couple of years. And
amazing.
She's an amazing Fiona, and she's a really great personality to have around in the office as well. And she, even though she's, I don't know how old she is exactly, she's probably
let's not skirt around there. but she's a great role model for people
she is, and
coming from non-conventional
She is,
roots.
and what she's got that kind of authority to talk to law school graduates who are joining the firm, who know nothing. And you'll do well if you're in that situation, to listen to Gemma, because she will guide you. She's a great mentor within the firm, to new starters, and she's an amazing example of how things can be done. You don't have to do it one way.
No, and I think it's great to see Latitude Law supporting that sort of route and journey. Now I want to ask you about your favourite fictional lawyer. Have you got one?
I had to think about this. I think my favourite would be Kim Wexler, who's the kind of foil to Jimmy McGill's less than straightforward lawyer character in Better Call Saul. She's really tenacious, but I mean, she needs to learn some delegation skills, I think. But you'd want her on your side. She puts together a good argument.
And have you got a book that's changed you?
I don't look for books about lawyers, but this is another book about a lawyer.
This is great for the Women in the Law book club, I tell you. We've got such a big list now.
This is a big book. It's nearly 1,000 pages. It's a
Crikey.
book by a New York public defender called Sergio Della Pava. It's called The Naked Singularity, and the lead is another public defender called Cassie. He demonstrates, I think, that there's more to life beyond your work. You can be, and your work can be kind of informed, and you can become a better lawyer if you've got outside interests. I mean, the kind of stuff Cassie gets involved in, you probably wouldn't want.
Oh right. So she's not making podcasts or giving speeches or speaking in schools like I am.
She's not making podcasts.
Oh right.
It's a little bit more challenging than that. A little bit closer to the edges of legality. But he's an amazing character, and I would definitely recommend that.
And who's that by?
To your book club, Sergio Della Pava.
Right, fantastic. That scribbling is me writing it down for the book club. I think it's going to be on the WhatsApp group soon. Fantastic. And Gary, I wanted to ask you then about any quotes that you live by, or any sort of sayings that's sort of meaningful to you.
I'm not very good at aphorisms, or I can never remember stuff. But what I did for this, because you reminded me of the character of Cassie, I went back and had a look through.
Who's not making podcasts in addition to the day job.
So here's Cassie's take on life. Intellectual discourse and investigation is admittedly great fun, but only truly meaningful when conducted in the service of others. There you go.
Wow. I didn't think the book was profound. I thought it was fun, but that sounds quite profound.
It's got a lot. It's a great American novel.
Thank you so much to Gary McIndoe. You can find out more about his work at latitudelaw.com and more about the charity RAPAR at rapar.org.uk. I'm Sally Penny. Thank you again for listening to this special episode of Talking Law, brought to you by latitudelaw.com. Do let us know what you think and perhaps who you would like to hear on future episodes by leaving us a comment wherever you listen to your podcast. And if you subscribe, you won't miss an episode. Until then, do check in and see what we're up to at womeninthelawuk.com. Bye-bye.